Hello and welcome. So we have a circle, lots of information. Now before we dive into it, remember a couple properties. We have central and inscribed angles. Central angles are angles that are formed at the center of the circle. Alright, and then whatever that angle measure is going to equal the measure of the arc that it's attached to. So, for example, if x is 40, right? If the angle is 40 is a central angle, the measure of the arc is also 40, right? And then inscribed angles, super similar, where it's going to be at the circumference, a point at the circumference, right? Except instead of just being equal or equivalent, it's going to be a double half relationship, where if the inscribed angle is, say, 20 degrees, then it would be twice as much on the measure of the arc, so it would be 40 degrees. Or you could say, so the arc will always be double the angle, or you could say that the angle is always half of the arc. Okay? Alrighty. So here, first thing we have is AD. This little section here is a diameter. Okay, and then from there you have the measure of angle CGD, which is going to be this little sliver right here is 105. Now I'm going to make this very obvious right here and say that the diagram is definitely not to scale. Alright, that's way too small for a 105 degree angle. But it's just showing relationships. We don't need it to be exact for us. And then we have BGC is 46 degrees for that one. And then we have the measure of EGA as 35 degrees. Alright, and then essentially wants us to find all of this stuff. Well, this one's actually not too bad to do, because first off, we know that these are all central angles, which means that if they're central angles, they are equal to their respective arcs. So that means that if this is 35, the arc is also 35 degrees, right? If the angle is 46 degrees, the measure of the arc will also be 46 degrees, right? Same thing, angle of 105, the arc has to be 105. Okay, and now how do we find the remaining portions? Well, we know something really important. A to D is a diameter, meaning that it cuts the circle in half. If the whole circle is 360, then this part is 180, and this part is 180, right? It'll slice it evenly. Well, if this whole section is 180, and we know that this section is 105 and 46, then that means that this remaining section has to be the 180, take out the 46, take out the 105, and what's remaining is the arc measure we're looking for. So all we have to do is simply just 180 minus the other two arcs, so 46 and 105. And we end up at 29 degrees. And once we know the arc is 29 degrees, we know the central angle, is also 29 degrees. Okay? Booyah! And then from there, we need to do the exact same thing on the other side of the diameter. So if this whole thing is 180, we know this part is 35, then it has to be 180 minus 35 to get our arc on the other side. So 180 minus 35, we get 145. Okay, and there you have it. And then as we know that is the arc, we know 145 is also the central angle. And that's it. That's all of the information we can find. So now let's just write it in our answer box. So the angle of AGB, so A to G to B, is going to be our little blue angle there, 29 degrees. EGD is going to be EGD, it's a little gray angle right there, it's 145. Alright, AED, we'll notice is an arc, so we go from A to E to D, which we know that if we go from A to E to D, that's going to be just part of your diameter there. That's 180 degrees. Okay, and then if we keep it running, we'd say, all right, well, from next stop, we have DAB. So D to A to B. It's going to be that whole section right there. Now, be very careful. This has to go in order of the letters left to right. So you have to go D first, then you must cross at A before you can cross at B. Okay, and how we can find that is we can just add up the corresponding arc. So if that's 145, this is 35, that's 29, then that should be 145 plus 35 plus 29. So when we add those three together, that is the major arc we're looking for. In other words, 209 degrees. And then last, most certainly not least, I'm going to take out, getting a little too many highlights. So we're looking at this last one. We'd say, okay, for this one, we start at D, right? We have to go to B next, and then to E. So we go D, B, E, that direction. Okay, which it starts at the arc of 105, adds the 46, the 29, the 35. Okay, so 105 plus 46 plus my very sketchy looking 2, 29 plus 35. And we end up with 215 degrees that direction. All right, let me just rewrite that. Okay, and that's it. That's all of the information you can find. Thanks for watching.